There's something outside my door. Something's lurking at the stairwell, going up and down all 5 floors. I was alerted to its presence by a scream one late evening. Someone must have gone out for a smoke and maybe socialized with his acquaintances when they saw it. There was no sounds of a struggle, nor any yelps of pain, only terror. I'm now glad that nature instilled that need to cry out when you're faced with something horrifying. Something so unexplainable that it rocks your understanding of the world around you. That way, you warn your pack about the danger. Even if you don't survive, the others learn to stay wary. Your death becomes a noble sacrifice, a meaningful event when you succumb to your terror in your last moments. And I barely managed to squeeze out my own scream of terror when I realized that the shriek that creature emitted, it was not the same that I had heard before. It was not the primal yell that had haunted us for the last week. This was something new. Something that somehow had managed to find its way into our apartment complex despite the precautions that had been taken. I spent half an hour looking out the eye hole, trying to catch a glimpse of it. The dim light bulb outside provided just enough lighting to see what was going on. At one point, something suddenly obscured the light, and I heard a pitter-patter across my door. A second of confusion was followed by a terrifying realization, and I jumped back from the door, trying to hold back my scream of surprise and shock. Whatever it was, it had just crawled across my door on its many legs. It could crawl on the walls, and that meant that the door on our roof was now a huge opening in our defenses. In the morning, me and the other guys from our militia stepped out to take a look at the damages that it had done. We found a bloody spot on the 4th floor, and a long blood trail which led to the roof, and there it led us towards the edge of the roof, where it ended. The damn thing not only found a way inside of our home, but it had killed one of ours and taken him back to its nest. Jeez. Since there's 2 creatures now, I feel like I should start giving them names. Ape Demon, or the Ape, sounds like a fitting description for the one that had been terrorizing us for the last few days. And on the next day, everyone unanimously decided to start calling the newcomer the Crawler. So, that's what we're going with now. So if the Ape is the juggernaut that watches the streets, the Crawler is an infiltrator that sneaks in and attacks us where we live. An Ape Demon and the Crawler? God, just 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have thought I could say those words with a serious look on my face. Since that event, we've put a lock on the door that leads to the roof. I think it was long overdue. It's just, we never thought we'd need to do that. I pray that it'll suffice to keep it out, and I make sure to have my curtains closed at all times. I'd hate to, one day, look outside my window and see that thing crawl across it, and I'd hate for it to see me inside, an easy prey ready for consumption. I'm more and more concerned with what's our endgame. And there's no chance that the water in our pipes could have gotten so bad in just over a week, that it would become so toxic. Bacterias don't kill you in one night. They don't make you foam at the mouth, and they don't make your skin purple. The water has some toxins in it now, which tells me that to our government, we're no more than unwanted eyewitnesses. If we make it to another part of town where the gunshots are heard, we won't be rescued. We'll be met with a firing squad. The food is also becoming a problem. Yesterday, I heard someone walking around asking the neighbors if they had some salt. Just a cooking salt to make their boring dinner more pleasurable. I heard 3 of my neighbors tell him to get lost. But who am I to judge? When they rung my doorbell, I didn't open the door. I know that it's just salt that they were looking for, but you can never be too careful. Perhaps it's their way of gauging the situation. Perhaps they'll think that if you have salt to spare, then you have plenty of other food inside, and that I'm just a viable target. And maybe I'm just talking nonsense. 2 days ago, I carefully checked the door in the basement that led to the flight of stairs where the bandits live. It was locked on a hanging lock, but neither I nor any of the other attendants heard the welding, which means that, if anything, it could be broken down. I need to get to the welder. This personal quest of mine that started out of boredom and curiosity has grown into necessity and a prerequisite to my survival. They must know something. They're calling all the shots on where everyone goes and what parts of the building that we all have access to. And they might have the tools to get us all out of here. I've thought about it. My only chance of making it is getting a torch or a buzzsaw from him, whichever one he happens to have, and cut the hatch that leads to the sewers open and escape through it. It's probably a maze down there, so if I end up making the wrong call on where to get out and come face to face with the military or the beast outside, I'm done for. But it's better than pushing my luck trying to escape through the surface. The only problem is getting to him before the bandits that he lives with gets to us. The cage gate that he's installed on the roof entrance has latches and a lock, which means that it can only be opened by them. Which means that it's they who decide who enters their flight of stairs, and it also means that they pretty much have a fortress within the fortress. I fear that those doors will come open not to cooperate, not to beg for food, but to hunt, to prey on the weak, and so far we have no solid way of fighting back against them. But the crawler and the bandits aren't our only problems. Yesterday, the ape learned that it was strong enough to rip the cages off the windows on the first floor. Worse, it was the apartment in the same stairwell as mine that it chose to attack. I heard its grunts outside, the screams of terrified people downstairs, the weeping metal that was being torn apart. I don't know what the people downstairs did to provoke the beast. Perhaps they thought that the cages would protect them, and they didn't have their curtains closed. Perhaps they saw the creature and decided to indulge themselves in a staring contest with it. I don't know. I didn't ask. One of the tenants who lived there managed to escape. I could see the terror in her eyes when I walked out of my apartment to see what was going on, just in time to have her push past me. But I knew that someone else was far less lucky. I heard the screams of a man who the ape had pinned down. I heard the loud thumps of its fist that was colliding with the man's flesh. And you know that thing where you can tell where the sound is coming from just from how much it's distorted by the echo? Well, judging by how it all sounded, I realized with terror that the screams were coming from that apartment on the first floor, and that the woman fleeing in terror didn't close the door on her way out, which meant that the ape, when it was done with the man downstairs, would be free to enter the stairwell and roam all 5 floors, and perhaps it wouldn't even be able to leave if it got lost here. I had to do something quick. It was very risky to go down there and try to close the door, but I knew that if I didn't do that, in that moment, I'd be dead within a few days anyway. It wasn't bravery that pushed me to such a reckless action, it was desperation. I was facing a paradox. Stay safe and die, or risk your life and live. And my body was telling me that it wanted to live some more. So I carefully made my way down to the first floor and took a peek at the door. And just as I suspected, it was wide open. I could hear the ape crunching on its already silent prey. And carefully, trying my best not to make a noise, I inched towards the door. I wanted to scream in terror from the fact that my steps weren't completely soundless. But I guess the creature didn't hear it over the sounds of bones breaking under its bite. I was now right next to the door. One more step and I'd be inside the apartment. The ape was now mere meters away from me, somewhere around the corner. And if I messed up, I'd have a second or maybe 2 to say my prayers. There was no going back now. Carefully, I slit the key out of its keyhole, and on its way out, it clanked, and the munching stopped. It took a step, and I slammed the front door, and started shoveling the key into the keyhole, but my trembling hands couldn't even pull that off. A muffled roar came from within the apartment, and I felt a massive body slam into the door from the other side. Luckily, the door seemed to be reinforced. The ex-tenants had made sure to protect themselves from the burglars, as with them living on the first floor, they were the prime targets. My legs were twitching from all the adrenaline in them, begging me to run away. I knew that if the creature somehow turned the door's handle, even if by accident, it would break out that instant, leaving me with no chance to survive. And with one final pause, I took a deep breath, and then I slipped the key in. A moment later, I turned it, locking the door. And the beast was subdued. I left the apartment through the window a few hours later, after it was done raging and consuming the man. After that, all of the tenants who lived on the first floor moved in with their neighbors above. They brought their food and supplies with them, and I'm glad to say that the people upstairs didn't seem to mind them. They realized that it would be heartless to let them live on the first floor or hang out in the stairwell, where they would be easy prey. Natasha had an old man move in with her as well. Still, even though the casualties were minimal, we've taken a huge hit. Our home, our submarine submerged in all this madness, has taken another hit and sunk even deeper. Now, I'm just currently thinking about how to get that welder and get him out without alerting any of those thugs. The roof is obviously not an option, but there's still a basement door that can be broken. I'll discuss that with Maxim tomorrow. It's time to act. And it's time to leave.